Okay, I would like to get to the next story now. I have a guest here for this next one. Um, just recently, about a month ago, there was a big development in Illinois in terms of cash bail. Is from NPR. Illinois Supreme Court rules in favor of ending the state's cash bail system. And NPR says in a 5-2 ruling Tuesday, the state's highest court overturned a ruling from an Illinois judge last December that a new state law to end cash bail was deemed unconstitutional. They overruled it, meaning they allow the state law ending cash bail. They said, quote, someone's experience with the criminal justice system should not vary based on their income level. That's what the attorney general said. The law ensures that the decision about whether people are detained pending trial is not based on whether they can afford to pay for their release. So on that topic, I am now joined by Jeffrey J. Clayton. He's the executive director of the American Bail Coalition, a trade organization that is committed to developing the most efficient means for pretrial release of criminal defendants, to talk about this bombshell decision from the Supreme Court. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So this was a big decision, and I want to get your take on it.
Well, we can get into the why I think it was unconstitutional, and I agree with the trial judge. But Justice Scalia once told me a joke. He thought the Sentencing Commission was unconstitutional. Of course, he was in the dissent. But what does this mean practically for Illinois? It means that the detention net of who's going to stay in jail and who's going to get out of jail is going to be defined for all time by the Illinois legislature. And it's not going to depend on what judges really think in each case or what prosecutors think in each case. It will to a certain extent, but the list of charges for which people stay in jail and the list of charges for which they don't is now clearly going to be defined by the legislature. And based on what they put out so far, there's reason for concern.
But so in terms of cash bail in a broader sense, and not just the decision by that court, so 2 countries in the world have cash bail, the United States and Philippines. What is it that we have right that 193 countries have wrong?
Well, I'd say we're the only 2 that have licensed commercial bail bondsmen. I mean, England and other countries require security for release. So what do we have right? I'm not sure. We have a right to bail that is similar to the English right to bail, but it allows for compensated sureties in 46 states. So I think that's the big difference, is that rather than in England, when I put up for Lee and say, hey, I'm going to cover it, I've got this forfeiture if he doesn't show up, that you could hire a third party in the United States and the Philippines to do that.
And in a lot of countries, it's illegal to, I guess, make money off of people's bail, correct?
Yeah, English Supreme Court early last century, and then of course U.S. Supreme Court, U.S. versus Leary, in a decision written by Oliver Wendell Holmes, said that state legislatures in the United States could allow for compensated sureties, that it wasn't what we would call void as against public policy.
Is this not so? So the U.S. has the largest prison state in the world, both per capita and per sheer number, regularly over 2 million people. In most countries, per capita, it's nothing like that. And a lot of those, a vast percentage of that is people before they've been found guilty. So should it not be innocent until proven guilty?
It definitely should. And I think there's reasons for that modern advent of mass incarceration. I think the right to bail predated all that, and the erosion of bail has led to that in the federal system, where when there was bail, we had a 1 out of 4 detention rate, and now it's 3 out of 4. So when you talk about Hunter Biden not getting detention, yeah, that was unusual, because 3 out of 4 people get detained in the federal system pending trial. The other thing is the length of trials have gotten longer. The average federal criminal case in 1984 lasted 60 days. Now we're talking about a year. So the custodial decisions of when somebody stays in is an order of magnitude larger because they sit there for so much longer. So we got 2 things going on here, which is more people are being detained by preventative detention and for want of bail, and they're staying longer when they don't get out. So that's a big problem.
So yeah, you're saying, sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's even 3 years that people wait for their trial. But I guess the vast majority of the time, or almost all of the time, if you have money, that doesn't happen, right?
Generally, I mean, ask Paul Manafort how that went when the judge imposed $10 million on him, or some of these
Well, there are
celebrity
rare
types.
exceptions, but in most cases.
Yeah, and that should happen. If a third party, it generally shouldn't be about the money. It's more of a test of your ties to the community. In other words, do you have people that believe in you, that want to put up for you, that can guarantee your appearance? And that's really what the standard traditionally was in this country. Now we've gotten into, do we think you're going to do it again, and all this sort of thing. That's kind of poison things. So, it
I
does
don't, I
hit
don't know
people
that
with.
someone being rich and able to afford their own bail, that doesn't show that they've done well to the community. I mean, someone being poor could have a great community.
Yeah, and I think that maybe that makes the argument that the prosecutor should be able to detain the wealthy person that can, hop on a private plane and fly away. So, I don't think that means we should get rid of the entire system. But I do agree that, people on the lower end have a harder time when it comes to bail and the criminal justice system.
So if you agree on that point, people on the lower end, people poorer, people struggling have a harder situation here. Why not find a new system of doing this rather than just saying, if you have the money, you can get out. If you don't, we're going to keep you locked up.
Well, I think systems of preventative detention are ripe for problems. And I think this is going to be an example of that. And like the federal system, we just keep piling charges on over time. And really, what we're trying to do is find people that are risky. And those would be the people that we keep in jail. And personally, I think the old doctrine of not getting into whether they're going to do it again and just focusing on whether they're going to show up, which is what we did in this country prior to 1980 and prior to mass incarceration, is the way to go. And yes, that will mean a lot less bail, but it'll also mean a lot less detention. So my goal in life is, if there's less bail, it would be because there's more release, not like what's going on in some states where we're saying, well, we don't want bail, we want to lock more people up. We're mad at the bail bond industry for letting people out on the cheap, and we want to start locking up more people, which is happening in a lot of the southern states right now.
You're saying a lot of the southern states are getting rid of cash bail and then locking up more people?
Right. That's the danger of getting rid of bail, right? Is we have this subtle balance we've had in this country where we're having an argument over what bail is sufficient, what bail is insufficient, and that's the deciding factor. And we're changing it into a system of preventative detention, and we're making lists of who stays in and why. And in the South, when we say we're getting rid of bail, it's not because we're going to say we're going to let people out on their own recognizance and let them get out for free like we're going to do in Illinois. We're going to lock up a lot more people and say we're just going to deny bail altogether. We don't even need to get into that.
So instead of the list you're talking about of who stays in and why, right now it's just, if you're rich, you get out.
Well, realistically, the judges are looking at prior conduct. So the higher the bail generally is correlated with how many failures you have in the past, is what generally will happen. And so when you see $1 million bails, you've got defendants who have multiple gun offenses who, nobody's going to put up for them. And that's going to be, why they end up staying in jail. So,
but if you're rich, you can have those multiple gun offenses and still be free.
You could, that's a possibility, but the judge, if they're doing their job, would set the bail to the point where it does make sense, and it very well probably will keep you in jail if we think that you're going to take off.
But to me, it still sounds like this is the opposite of innocent until proven guilty. This sounds like proven guilty until proven guilty.
Well, I'd say, going to a system of preventative detention really is, because we're asking, do we think you're going to do it again? Right. And that's where we're going in Illinois. We're going to start with a low.
Wait, do it again? You haven't even been found guilty yet.
Right. And that's what I'm saying, is that prior to the 80s in this country, we never asked that on bail. We never said, is he going to do it again? We said, is he going to show up? And that was always the determining factor of whether you got out or not. Now we've gotten into this whole business of, is he going to do it again? And we say, oh, we're going to put $100,000 bail on you because you're going to do it again. Well, if you post it, that's not going to prevent it. Right. And that's the whole problem with interjecting this concept of we're going to prevent you from doing it again, and how detention policies and high bails can erode the presumption of innocence for that reason. So we need to convict people. And as Thurgood Marshall would say, stop taking shortcuts. And that's what we've allowed ourselves to do by doing detention policies and lengthening the trials, is we just say, well, they'll plea, and if they don't, we'll just let them sit and rot.
Well, to go back to, if we get rid of cash bail, there'll be more people in prison. That doesn't seem to be the case. If we're the largest prison state in the world and we're one of only 2 in the world that has cash bail, it seems like cash bail very much might be connected to us being the largest prison state in the world?
Well, I think it's a question of re-engineering. We could certainly re-engineer a system without bail with a very, very limited detention net, and I think that's where Illinois is going to go to start, and we'll see if that works, and we'll see what the arguments need to be made. And I think everyone should argue that the pretrial detention net, the number of people sitting in jail pretrial, should be decreased, and we would all argue that the trial should speed up. So I think everybody's on board, with that argument that that's the detention net is too high. The problem is in the federal system, if we go into this culture of detention and we start adding too many charges, we're going to flip the equation the other way and end up detaining more people, which is what we don't want. So that's the risk.
I saw one of the statements put out by, it was either you or your organization, was that in one example, I can't remember the town, but somewhere they got rid of cash bail. And then the statement said that violent crime went up by 25% because they did that. But as well as I do, correlation doesn't equal causation and causality. There could be a lot going on in this town that's unrelated.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, we try to rely on at least some judgment of a public official. In that case, it was probably a quote to the police commissioner of New York City who was arguing correlation and causation, I suppose you should say. And he probably didn't have the evidence for it. I think you're right about that. I think there's all these big statistical trends in crime. There's neither one cause nor one reason why that's happening. And so I try to stay away from that. And then obviously I'll get the blame for it. The whole reason that there is mass pretrial incarceration is because, there's for-profit money bail bondsmen, when we all know that's not the case either. So I think that cuts both ways.
So even if cash bail remained, why should so many people be making so much money from it? I mean, there's just a crazy number of people profiting off of really misery and pain by people in our society that they're going through. Why should there be a profit motive in this?
Well, I think it creates an economic incentive to decarcerate. And really, it's a service. It's an option that you can use. You don't have to use the service of a bail bondsman. I think there are a lot of private industries in corrections. I think right now we say that's bad. But my position is, and from what I've seen and having worked on both sides of it, we're represented the largest, agency that supervises offenders in Colorado for a half decade, is that we need private industry to come up with better solutions than we have right now. And part of that is going to be having alternatives to prison and alternatives to incarceration that could work. So I don't say we're profiting off of misery. It's a core constitutional right, and we're helping people exercise that by acting as their compensated personal surety. So it's important, and we have to have it. It's not like buying a car, something like that. So, and it's not like private prisons. We profit off of decarceration. The more people stay in, the worse it is for us. And so I think we want that incentive to decarcerate the jails.
Well, you profit off of decarceration if cash bail remains a thing, but if it's gotten rid of and there's no profit there, then you lose your profit, or others lose their profit. So.
That's correct. And like I said, I'd rather lose to the fact that we can let more people out safely than we're just going to go with a system of locking everybody up like the federal system.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Jeff. I appreciate having you here.
Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Yep. Have a good day. All right. That was Jeff Clayton. It sounded like he had wrapped up a bunch of talking quickly like a used car salesman around the idea that we should have poor people locked up longer. No, I think one of the things, which I tried to point this out to him, is that he seemed very certain that you get rid of cash bail and you just lock up a lot more people, which I don't think there's any evidence of that. It's like, oh no, we get rid of cash bail so that rich people can't just buy their way out of prison, and then we just lock up everybody else. So we just lock up all the people because we got rid of cash bail. But that's not the case, and that's not the case in 193 out of the 195 countries on this planet. So, and the things he said that like he kind of admitted to was, like when I said that yeah, you say you're making money off of getting people out of prison, but that's only true if we were to if we didn't get rid of cash bail entirely. If we got rid of that system entirely, then you lose your profit, and the other group that he's representing lose their profit. And so they have a reason to keep supporting this idea that the poor cannot get out of prison if they don't come up with money. Anyway, seems like a bunch of bogus talking points to me, but oh well. All right, let's oh, and I've actually forgot to bring this up, so I'll read this now because I meant to bring this up. So this is from the ACLU on the same topic. Cash bail leads to wealth-based detention. Jailing people because they cannot afford to post money bail amounts to wealth-based detention that violates well-established norms of fairness and constitutional principles. One of the most basic principles underlying our criminal justice system is the presumption of innocence, that one is innocent until proven guilty. Keeping people in jail solely because of their poverty before they have been found guilty of any offense flips this fundamental presumption on its head. Cash bail allows people with financial means to purchase their freedom, while those without cash remain incarcerated. Freedom from incarceration should not depend on one's wealth. Cash bail is the leading cause of mass incarceration crisis in the United States. And I did mention this to Jeff, but the United States is one of only 2 nations in the world that use cash bail. The other is the Philippines. Most other common law countries criminalize the practice of requiring money in exchange for pretrial liberty. Nationwide, 62% of people held in jail have not been sentenced. 62%. Over 50% of our massive prison state have not been sentenced. The majority of these people, who should be presumed innocent, are held because they cannot pay cash bail. The United States has more, 526,000, detained pre-trial than most other countries have in their jails and prisons combined. Like all told, we have more pre-trial than they have in their entirety. In the past 3 decades, both the use of cash bail and the amount of money assigned as bail has risen steeply. So even the ACLU is very much opposed to everything Jeff was just saying.